My question is why I got the 1:30 slot. If I see anybody with their eyes closed or drooling, I'm going to call you out.
I understand.
Glad to be here. I've been asked to talk about the importance of welding. I wanted to start with a little story that might help us see something about that. I want to talk about two lives. This man was born on a dairy farm, and he grew up in the farming community. He said by the time he was 3 or 4 years old, he was kind of a wild child and spent a lot of his time in the forest close to their farm by himself. By the time he was 5, he had built a raft, and he was rafting on the river at 5 years old. Between the ages of 8 and 13, he was driving their pickups and their tractors and their combines. He said one day, at 12 years old, his dad was taking him out to the field to plow the field, 12 years old. Before he let him out of the truck, he said, "Son, if that tractor breaks down, you had better not be sitting under a tree when I show up. You fix the tractor." So he was required by his dad to repair that old tractor. He never finished high school. Never finished high school. The second life that I want to talk to you about is a man who was a Marine. He spent a lot of time in aircraft. He flew over 18,000 hours in 160 different planes. He jumped out of an airplane with parachutes over 800 times. He ended up with 7 graduate degrees in math, and computers, and chemistry, and medicine, physiology, literature, and psychology. He has 20 honorary doctorates. During one part of his career, he was a part-time trauma surgeon. Then he spent 30 years as an astronaut for NASA. He flew in 6 space shuttle flights. He piloted 2 of them. His crowning achievement was he was the astronaut that was chosen to repair the Hubble telescope. He was the one chosen. Well, several years ago, we had a lectureship series going out at Wylie, and this astronaut was asked to speak at our lectureship. In the afternoon, after school was over, I went to pick up my mail in the Teacher's Center, and there he sat, waiting for the lectureship to start. I had the opportunity to spend about 15-20 minutes with this amazing man. And as we talked, he talked about repairing the Hubble telescope. And he said, he asked me, he said, "Do you have any idea why I was the astronaut, out of all the astronauts available, why was I chosen to repair that telescope?" And then he responded. He said, "Because when I was 12 years old, on the way to plow that field, my dad turned to me and said, 'Son, if that tractor breaks down, you better fix it.'" Growing up on a farm, he learned to use tools. He learned to use equipment. His name was Story Musgrave. You got a picture for us? This is Story Musgrave. Skill with tools can create opportunities that you can't imagine at this time in your life. Just like I know that when he was laying underneath that tractor at 12 years old, out in that old dusty field, he didn't think to himself, this is amazing, because one day the skills that I acquire right here will take me into outer space and I'll be able to repair the Hubble telescope. He didn't think that. He didn't have a clue. But because he developed so many skills with tools, it took him to places that he could never imagine at that point in his life. And it's, the same is true for all of us. The tool I want to encourage you to think about learning to use today is a welder. You need somebody on your team, or some bodies, that know how to weld. The more skills and abilities that you develop in your teammates, in your team, the easier and the cheaper it is for you to build your car. We have, our cars, we're pretty cheap. Our cars run probably somewhere between $5,000 and $7,000. That's what we build them for. You need a welder on your team. Here's 5 reasons you need a welder. If you don't have a welder, what do? You got to rely on the goodwill of a friend or the welding teacher at school. And you know, sometimes that goodwill is not very tall. It's pretty short. They'll help you a little bit, then they kind of lose interest. You need somebody on your team that can stay with it and weld that car. If you have to hire somebody to weld, that is very expensive. Unless you've got lots of money and can just hire it done, you need a welder. Whenever we build parts for our cars, we like to think that we're going to go in there and design it on the CAD program, go out there and cut it out and weld it together, and it works. Joel's laughing back there because he knows that's not the way it goes. It takes multiple prototypes to get a part to work. If you have to hire somebody, you build a part, you design it, CAD it, take it to them, this is what we want, you get it back, it doesn't work. When you go 4 or 5 times like that, you spend a boatload of money. Another reason you need a welder is it has never failed in scrutineering that we take our car and the judges look at it and go, this is not going to work. You got to do something different. And so because we have welding skills, we can go in there and make that happen in pretty short order. Year before last, our whole rear suspension system had to be rebuilt. And we were running out of time. But because we had a welder, someone who knew how to weld, we went in there and just in a few short hours, we had a completely new suspension system on the car. If you're driving through the middle of Arizona and you hit a pothole and it breaks your front suspension, what do? If you don't have somebody that can fix it, you don't have somebody that can weld it, you have to load it up on the trailer, take it into a town, find someone that's got a welder, and make the repairs. If you've got a little generator and a little MIG welder, you pull that welder out, you crank that MIG welder up, you weld that car back together, and off you go. You never know what you're going to need in the future. If you learn welding, if you learn skills with tools, it will help your team. How do you learn? How do you learn to weld? One of the first things that you have to face is the fear and all of the times you have heard how difficult it is to weld. Well, I'm a welding teacher, and we have about 160 kids that come through our program, and every year, the vast majority of them will get pretty good with a MIG welder. So what I'm saying with that is you can learn how to weld. Don't listen to those voices that tell you you can't. You can do this. Number two, you can purchase equipment, a little MIG welder for $200 to $300. If you can't afford $200 to $300 right now, go rent you one. Doesn't cost that much. Number three, how do you do it? How do you learn? One of the great sources is YouTube. There are thousands of videos on how to weld. Some of my best students, they would go home at night and watch YouTube videos and come back to school the next day and go, I learned a new technique, I'm going to try this. And they got to be amazing welders by watching YouTube videos. Number four, you can ask somebody. Surely there's somebody around that knows how to weld, and you can ask them, can you come teach us how to weld? And lastly, we are going to be hosting a workshop at Wylie East High School sometime this year on how to learn how to weld. And want to invite you guys. We're going to put together a Saturday, and we will do a day training, and more than likely by the end of the day you can put some metal together. So that is a workshop that we will put together in the next few months. Jeff, hold up your hand back there. If you're interested, Jeff is going to have a sign-up sheet. Go talk to Jeff, and he'll get your name and contact information on the list. Well, that's all I had for you.